to the issue of the whistleblowing policy. We find out how this policy will fare and the manner in which it can be effectively implemented, especially now that there are plans to concretize such a policy to an act as a proper law in Nigeria. We hear from a lawyer and also the Executive Director of African Center for Parliamentary and Constitutional Studies, Mr. Emmanuel Anyegbolam. Thank you so much for joining us at this time. First, is Nigeria's whistleblowing policy effective?
Well, actually, the issue is rather than think of a law on whistleblowing, what Nigeria had is a policy. And the policy became rather amusing in the sense that the whistleblower, who is supposed to be an undercover agent by our own policy, now has to come up and even make claims, which is really out of the context of what an actual whistleblower will be. Let's take the ordeal of Trevelle, current Trevelle of the President of the United States of America, was caused actually by a whistleblower who filed that he made a telephone call to the Venezuelan president on barely 24 hours after Mueller report was submitted. The whistleblower made his report. The chief security officer did not carry out that, but because the law provided that after 7 days, he can now proceed to another level from when he did that, and now you have seen it with the House of Representatives already impeach the president, though he may at the Senate survive that ordeal. But actually, it presents that whistleblowing should have the mindset of an act which also may protect the person you are exposing. So at the moment, the policy in Nigeria, let me say more or less, has not worked in the sense that it had been a knee-jerk approach. There was a time in the INEC office in Taraba where we were told that there were some amounts of money there, which were EFCC went to recover. Up to now, we have not heard anything about that. But so what I'm saying is that if we have an act which fully comes as a legislation, but we must be able to see our own peculiarities in going into this level of acts.
Well, this policy you've mentioned and you're criticizing at the point at this moment have recovered several funds. If we can see the slide that talked about since the policy in 2016, I believe, December, in 2017, the federal government recovered over $178 million. June 5th of 2017, that's earlier that year, the Federal Ministry of Finance received a total number of tips that came through the website, through phone calls, through emails. 5,000 tips were received by the Ministry of Finance. We also had the sums of monies like that in Kaduna State recovered from a home belonging to the former group managing director of the NNPC, and several other sums. Even the EFCC also claimed to have received monies in thousands of dollars and British pounds. Now, I mean, aren't these efforts that policy, at best, has indeed worked for the country?
If it is a policy that is working for the country, the perpetrators of these acts would have by now come under the law, and there would have been transparency in the source of the fund, how these funds reach to individual residential destination. Because we have a public financial institution. We have an auditor general, we have accountant general, and then who issued these funds and how they reach there. That's why we are saying that in the 21st century, we are not talking about the Stone Age. There are issues on ground. Where are the source of this fund? How did it emerge? And who abused his office that the amount of money you are calling left public coffers into private residence or into private hands? So these are the basic issues we are talking about. And then until we see that somebody appropriated for this fund, what was it meant for? Who authorized the release? How did the authority to incur expenditure come up? And how did it now enter either by dollar or naira into individual hands? These are the basic issues in fighting corruption, if we were out to fight corruption. That is my stand on it. So it is not an issue of listing funds you have recovered without now telling us how these funds got there and who was the whistleblower. And then now if the money has been paid back to public treasury, what it has been used for. We are still on Abacha loot. And even those that we are recovered, we have not been able to account for that. So if we are talking on anti-corruption as a general issue that affects each and every one of us, then we should also have what? A bold, proactive, and tangible legal regime towards it. That is my submission.
We appreciate your time and analysis on the issue. Emmanuel Aigbonim, Director, Constitutional and Parliamentary Studies, African Studies. Thank you for joining us.